Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I would like to share my story that I experienced a couple of years ago. I'd say that it was my third day working at the mall, and I was still getting used to the hustle and bustle of the place. I was excited about my new job, just trying to learn the ropes and fit in with my coworkers. This job wasn't really my first choice, but beggars can't be choosers, right? I needed money. So as I was folding clothes, a man walked into the store. He had a scruffy look, wearing a worn-out jacket and jeans, with a beanie almost covering his eyes. His beard was unkempt and he had a creepy grin on his face. Not sure if that's the right word to describe it, but that's how it made me feel. One of my workmates leaned over and whispered that the man was known to be a bit of strange and that I should be careful around him. I nodded, keeping that advice in mind. I tried to focus on my work and avoid him, but not long after, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, and there he was, standing too close for comfort. He started talking. At first, he was asking about product location and stuff inside the mall. But then he was rambling on about some topics that didn't even relate to the store or anything that he might need. And it became more personal. I just forced a polite smile, giving short answers and trying to keep things professional. But my nerves were on edge, and all I could think of was the warning that my coworker gave me earlier. So, I decided to make an excuse that I needed to get something from the back of the mall, and I quickly walked away. At the same time, it was nearing my break, so I decided to take it. And when I came back, he was gone. I felt relieved, hoping that that was the end of it. But the next day, he showed up again, walking straight to me as soon as he entered. That shocked me, and I actually got annoyed about the situation, but I didn't want to cause trouble at my new job, so I tried to be polite, answered a few questions of his again, and then slipped away to the back. This pattern continued for a week. Each day he came in, and I tried to avoid him, but for some reason, he kept finding me and kept talking to me. One day, he brought me some food. He said that he made way too much and he brought the extra ones to give to me. I declined, telling him that we were not allowed to receive gifts from customers, which isn't exactly a lie. And then one day, he came in with flowers. After he brought the flowers, I told him frankly that I wasn't interested and that I was in a relationship with someone already. I wanted to make sure that this guy knew that I was not leading him on and that whatever he is doing or planning will not give him any results. But that didn't stop him. He was back again the next day, more persistent and pushier. I became more anxious with each encounter. One time I was sick and I had to take a couple of days off. And when I returned, my coworker Marie told me that he came looking for me every single day. The thought of him lurking around was terrifying, and I started dreading going to work. I talked to my boyfriend about it and he was obviously upset. He offered to drive me to work and pick me up every day. One morning, as I got out of my boyfriend's car, I noticed the man standing outside the mall. He saw me with my boyfriend and his expression turned angry. I just ignored him the best that I could and I went inside and clocked in. When I got to the floor, the man approached me, clearly upset. He demanded to know who that man was, and I reminded him that I had already told him about my relationship and that I again was not interested in him. He lost his temper. He was yelling and throwing clothes around, and my supervisor noticed the commotion and then came over. I explained the situation and thankfully, my coworkers backed me up. The supervisor took my side and told the man that he was no longer welcome in the mall. The man then stormed off, and then I was called into the office. My supervisor called it making a paper trail just in case we needed it for later. I was actually worried that I was going to get fired, but thankfully they were understanding and that didn't happen. When I went out of my supervisor's office, I then called my boyfriend and told him about everything that happened. Just a bit of background. Where I'm from, it's not unusual for people to carry, if you know what I mean. And my boyfriend, being quite the enthusiast, decided that he would bring his own and just have it with him in case the guy came back when he picked me up. Later that day, when I clocked out, my boyfriend was waiting for me at the mall's entrance. He held my hand as we walked to the parking lot. And when we turned the corner, we saw a man standing by our car. And as we got closer, it was indeed the same creepy guy, looking menacing as ever. He had a dark look in his eyes and a creepy grin. Fear gripped me, and I started shaking, and I almost forgot that my boyfriend was there until he spoke. He asked the man in a loud voice what he was doing, and then he lifted his shirt, showing his gun. That was enough to make the man back away. My boyfriend yelled at him, warning him to leave me alone, and if he ever bothers me again, that he would hunt the man down, and that made the man finally run off. We got into the car and drove away, and I called my supervisor and I took the next 2 days off. My friend then later told me that the man didn't come back during those days. I guess my boyfriend's warning worked. I ended up working there for almost a year without any more trouble from him. And now, my boyfriend is my husband, and I'm at home taking care of our kids. I haven't seen or heard from that creepy man again, and I hope that I never do. So, to the man who stalked me at the mall, let's never meet again. I work at a known fast food joint. I won't say which one, but you can guess if I say that it has a big M on it. Anyway, after finishing my late afternoon shift at that fast food joint, I packed up and I started my usual walk home. Normally, my path takes along the main road where there are always lots of people, some bright streetlights, and the comforting hum of activity all around me. But today was different. The main street was closed for construction, with a big orange barrier blocking the sidewalks and signs pointing in a different direction. It really left me with no choice but to find an alternate route. I hesitated for a moment before turning onto a side street that I didn't use often. It was quieter, with fewer people and houses spaced a bit further apart. I tried to keep a steady pace, focusing on the rhythm of my footsteps against the pavement. And as I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being alone in the dimming light, the sun settling behind the rooftops. A few blocks down, I noticed someone behind me. At first, it seemed like nothing, just another person heading home, I told myself. But there was something about his steady pace, keeping the same distance behind me, that made me really uneasy. I could see him clearly when I glanced back, a tall, shadowy figure in a dark jacket, walking with a certain purpose. It was starting to get dark now. I was a bit nervous, but I tried to brush off the worry and I just kept walking. But as I turned the corner, he turned too. He was maintaining that same steady pace. A shiver ran down my spine, and I remembered a tip from my self-defense class that I had taken. Make 4 left turns to see if someone is truly following you. It seemed like a good time to test that out. So I took the first left, then another, each turn making my heart race a bit faster. And guess what? He followed me through each one. and by the time that I had made the fourth left turn, it was undeniable. This person was following me, and I started to panic inside. I felt the urge to run, to just sprint away as fast as I could. But common sense held me back. Running might only encourage him to chase me, and what if he was faster? Then I would be in real trouble. Plus, I didn't want him to know where I lived, so I needed to think fast. Fumbling with my phone, I quickly sent a text to my best friend. I told her that I needed help and that I needed her to pick me up and that it was urgent. I asked her to meet me a few streets over. It was a place that I could reach quickly without slowing down. I didn't want to stop, not even for a single moment. And I probably was the luckiest person at that time because my friend was able to read the message so quickly, responded, and said that she was on her way. The walk to the meeting point felt like an eternity. The streets were mostly empty, with just the occasional car passing by. Each step felt heavy. My senses were on high alert, and I was listening intently for any change in pace behind me. And then finally, I saw my friend's car parked where I'd asked. Relief washed over me, but I couldn't let on just yet. I kept my pace steady, trying to appear unbothered, and at the last moment I veered towards her car, yanking the door open and jumping inside. I slammed the door shut, locking it quickly. My heart pounded in my chest, and adrenaline was still rushing through me. Outside, the man stopped a couple of feet from us, and he just stared at us. He stayed there for a few seconds, as if he was thinking of what to do next. I held my breath, hoping that he would just leave. And eventually, he did turn away, walking off down another street, his figure fading into the dark. The tension in the car lifted slightly, but my hands were still shaking. I took a deep breath, grateful for my friend's quick response and the safety of her car. She then took me home, and luckily, I never saw that man again. Yeah, I'm never using that route, ever again. Hello everyone, I'm a female, and I'm a teaching assistant. Being a teaching assistant at my university for a women's studies course was something that I had looked forward to. It was a role that allowed me to engage deeply with subjects that I cared about, and I enjoyed helping students navigate the material. Most of my students were women, which was typical for this class. However, because of special circumstances, one of my students was a middle-aged man. He stood out not because of his age and his gender, but because of how much of my time he demanded. From the first class, he seemed to need extra help. After almost every session, he would send me emails filled with questions about the assignments and work. It wasn't just once or twice, it was a constant stream. I would take the time to respond patiently, but I often pointed out that most of the answers were in the syllabus that he had access to, hoping that he would start to rely on it more and become more independent. Despite my hints though, this pattern continued. It was clear that he either didn't read my responses carefully or just chose to ignore them altogether. In class, I would sometimes feel his eyes on me, watching intently as I spoke or moved around the room. It was uncomfortable, the kind of attention that felt too focused. I tried to shake off the feeling, reminding myself to stay professional and focus on the needs of all my students and not just one. But things built up over the semester, leading to the final exam day. After he handed in his exam paper, he approached me while most of the other students were still finishing up. Initially, our talk was about the exam, which was normal enough, and I didn't mind. I answered his questions briefly, expecting the conversation to end there. But then he switched topics, asking about my plans for summer, and I just gave vague answers hoping to steer the conversation back to academics, or just end it altogether. But then, he caught me off guard by asking me if I wanted to go for coffee. He said that I was the prettiest girl that he had ever seen and even compared me to his daughter, which made me extremely uncomfortable. He mentioned that he wanted to ask me out earlier but refrained because it would have been unprofessional while he was still a student. And now that he had completed the course, he saw no reason not to ask. I was shocked and I told him no, trying to keep my response as polite as possible despite my discomfort. It was really an inappropriate request, and I hoped that my refusal would be the end of it. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Over the next few days, my email inbox became filled with messages from him. He kept asking why I had turned him down, insisting that I should give him a chance. He said that he was divorced and he was not attached to anyone. He claimed that he could spoil me with gifts and that it would be fun. Each new message felt more intrusive and made me more uncomfortable. Recognizing how serious this was becoming, I decided to block his email. I also reported the situation to the university, hoping that they could probably intervene and stop the harassment. But since he hadn't technically violated any university policies, there wasn't much that they could do. Which was not a pleasing outcome to this at all. But the good thing is, he only had my email, so after I blocked him, I did not get any more communication from him. And I sincerely hope that it stays that way. Hi everyone. I would like to share an experience that happened to me 2 years ago. I'm a female, and I'm 17. It was one of those lazy days where I had no school. It was a weekend, and my parents were home too. I was just hanging out in my room enjoying the quiet. The weather was warm, so I had opened my window to let in some fresh air. It was nice, the gentle breeze moving through the room as I lay on my bed, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone. As I lazily swiped and liked some post, a shadow suddenly blocked the light streaming in from the window. It took me by surprise, and at first I thought maybe it was my dad playing a prank on me. But as I looked closer, I realized the figure was too tall and bulky to be him. A jolt of fear ran through me when I saw a man standing there, wearing a hoodie. I couldn't see his face that much, but I know that he wasn't my dad. I sat up quickly, and my heart was racing. The man just stood there for a second, and then he took off running. I was too shocked to even move at first, but as the realization sank in, I hurried out of my room and then into the living room where my parents were. They were watching TV, and I explained what had happened. My mom had a worried look on her face and she mentioned that she had a strange feeling that the man might return. My dad decided to go outside and check around the house, but he didn't find anyone or anything unusual. And since nothing happened and my dad didn't find anyone, we didn't call the police. My dad said that maybe it was a one-time thing with a creep and that he wouldn't come back. So, we went about our afternoon as usual. And for a couple of hours, I did have that incident off of my mind. But when it was about bedtime, I remembered I suddenly got spooked and I made sure to lock my window, which in hindsight might have actually helped me and protected me from what was going to happen next. That night, it was already past 11 and I was in bed trying to fall asleep. The house was quiet and my mind kept going back to the shadow at the window. But just as I was beginning to drift off, I heard a soft knock on the window. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt fear wash over me. I am so thankful that I had locked it because of the earlier incident. I thought that I may just be paranoid and was just imagining things, but I heard the knock again. I remember my mom's words about the man possibly coming back, so I got out of my bed as quietly as I could, and I crept down the hallway to my parents' room. I knocked softly, and luckily they were still awake and my dad opened the door. I whispered to him what I heard, and my mom, hearing our hushed conversation, immediately reached for the phone to call 911. My dad grabbed a bat and went outside as quickly as he could, determined to confront whoever was out there. And from the inside of the house, I heard his voice shouting and some sounds of a scuffle. My heart was pounding. I was worrying about what might be happening to my dad, so we rushed out to check on him, worried about what we would find. But there, in the dim light, my dad was holding down the man who had been outside of my window. This time, I got a clear look at his face, but I realized that I didn't recognize him at all. He was just a stranger. The police arrived after a couple of minutes, and they took the man away in their car. The police officers interviewed us and asked us about what happened, and we recounted the events of the day. And afterwards, we finally learned the truth from the officers. That guy was a known stalker, someone who had been targeting teenage girls. He took photos, followed them home, and sometimes even broke into their houses to steal personal items. He wasn't from our town, but he had come here to cause trouble, it seemed. Of course, I pressed charges. It was a relief to know that he wouldn't be bothering us or anyone else for a long time. But even with that reassurance, I have never opened that window in my room since that day. The thought of it makes my skin crawl even now. It's a scary world sometimes, and it's important to stay aware. I just want to remind everyone to lock your doors and your windows. When my roommate first introduced me to her boyfriend, he seemed like a genuinely nice person. He had a warm smile, was polite, and knew how to make a good impression. He was the kind of guy who seemed to fit right in with our group whenever he came over. At first, I appreciated how happy he made my roommate. She was really into him, and I could see why. He was charming and attentive. As weeks went by, he started spending more time at our place. It became a regular thing to have him around during dinners, study sessions, and even the lazy weekends. My roommate, wanting to make things more convenient, decided to give him a key to our apartment. I did understand her reasoning. They were in love and it made sense for him to have easy access. Plus, he hadn't given me any reason to feel uneasy. He was just her boyfriend, hanging around like boyfriends do. One evening, my roommate had to work late, leaving just me and her boyfriend in the apartment. We started off watching TV in the living room. It was a little awkward being alone with him, and I could feel the silence stretching out between us. So, he broke the ice by starting a conversation. We chatted about my roommate, about how great she was, and shared some laughs about little things. I began to think that maybe this wouldn't be so awkward after all. But then, he shifted the focus to me. He started asking about my love life, something that I didn't expect him to be interested in. I told him that I wasn't seeing anyone currently, thinking that it was just part of friendly chit-chat. But as the conversation continued, his tone shifted. The friendly vibe turned into something different, more personal and flirty. He made a few comments that made me uncomfortable, the kind that makes you question if you heard it right. I felt a knot form in my stomach, and the room felt smaller and I could feel my heart beating a bit faster. It was clear that I needed to get out of the situation, so I stood up, mentioning something about needing to grab something from my room. He tried to convince me to stay, but I politely excused myself and I headed to my room. I closed the door behind me and I locked it. After that evening, I noticed a change in his behavior. Whenever he came over, which was often, he would look for moments to get me alone. Sometimes, he would try to catch me in the kitchen or in the hallway, starting conversations that seemed innocent at first, but quickly turning odd again. His presence in the house has now become a constant anxiety for me. I knew that I couldn't live like this and that I couldn't keep this to myself. So one night, when my roommate's boyfriend wasn't there, I decided to talk to her. It was an extremely difficult conversation, telling her that her boyfriend made me uncomfortable. I explained how he acted when she wasn't around, hoping that she would understand my concerns. I also told her about the things that he said. But instead of getting some understanding or support, I was met with anger and accusations. She thought I was lying, just trying to break them up for some reason. She said that I was jealous about her and her relationship. And it really hurt a lot, especially because it felt like our friendship was being tested in the worst way. The atmosphere at home changed after that. My roommate and I weren't as close anymore, and I noticed the distance growing between us. We stopped talking, we stopped hanging out, we stopped eating together. We were once easygoing and open, but now there was just tension. It felt like living with a stranger that hated me. I was feeling extremely frustrated with the situation because I have done nothing to lead her boyfriend on, and now this nasty man is destroying the peace that we have at our home with my roommate. Eventually, she broke up with him. I should have felt relief, but the damage was done. The trust between us was fractured, and the things between her and me never really went back to how they were. So when the lease was up, I decided to move out, and we never spoke again. I was 24 when it happened, just out of college and trying to figure out my place in the world. My name's Lisa, and like many people my age, I found comfort and connection on the internet. I spent a lot of time in online communities, especially ones related to my hobbies. Being part of these groups was a great way to meet people and share common interest. One day, I joined a new online community focused on art and photography. It was a really welcoming space, and I quickly got involved in discussions. I also shared my work, and I was getting feedback. That's where I met a guy named Jonah. Jonah was around my age, and we clicked right away. We exchanged comments on each other's posts, gradually moving on to private messages. It was nice to have someone who appreciated my work and shared similar taste. Our conversations flowed easily, and over time, they became a regular part of my day. At first, everything seemed innocent. We talked about art, life, and sometimes even more personal things, like our dreams and our struggles in life. Having someone to talk to made things feel less lonely, and I enjoyed getting to know him. I didn't have much friends, and I was also single. It felt like a genuine friendship, even though we had never met in person. Our interactions increased daily, and Jonah started becoming more involved in my life. It was really subtle at first, just little things like suggesting improvements on my photos or recommending techniques. His advice was often helpful, and I really appreciated it. However, over time, Jonah's behavior started to change. He became more insistent. He was pushing his opinions and reacting negatively when I didn't follow his suggestions. If I shared a photo he didn't like, he would criticize it harshly, questioning my choices. When he suggests something and I don't follow it exactly to the T, he scolds me and says things that aren't exactly the nicest. I should have talked back and set boundaries, but at first, I brushed it off as him just being extremely passionate about things. But then he started getting more personal, criticizing my decisions outside of art, questioning my life choices. And as for what choices I'm talking about, I'm not gonna get into too much detail about that. As I said earlier, we've had daily conversations that covered even things that were outside our hobbies. Anyway, it was really strange because he seemed so supportive before. The change was weird, but I just tried to ignore it, hoping things would go back to how they were. Maybe he was just going through some stuff in his life, and that's why he was so snappy and acting strange. But then one evening, I noticed something unusual. I casually mentioned in one of our conversations that I would be visiting a local art exhibit. It wasn't a big deal, just a casual plan that I was excited about. And when I got there, I was surprised to find Jonah waiting outside. I recognized him from the photos that he sent me. And the weird thing is, I hadn't told him exactly where or when I would be there, and seeing him in person felt kinda odd. He acted like it was a coincidence, but it didn't sit right with me. But we did exchange pleasantries and went inside together. The encounter left me feeling a little bit uneasy. Luckily, the whole time that we were there, he was acting normal and it was quite pleasant. But after that day, Jonah appearing more often in places that I frequented. At first, he would casually mention that he had happened to be in the area, but the frequency of these encounters increased. It was as if he was keeping track of my movements, showing up at my favorite spots, bookstores, art shops, without any prior notice. And it's just too much to be a coincidence. It didn't help that he started making comments about things that I hadn't shared with him, like a new book that I bought or a piece of clothing that I'd worn. It was as if he knew things that he shouldn't, and that realization was terrifying to me. I started limiting what I shared online, hoping to regain some sense of privacy. I stopped posting as much, but Jonah's messages became more intrusive, asking why I was avoiding him and demanding explanations. The friendly tone that once defined our conversations was gone. I just told him a lie that I needed some time alone with myself, that I wouldn't be online much, and that I was just not in the mood for any social interaction. And after that, he just left me unread. A couple of days passed without getting any messages from him. I started to relax and I thought that everything was over. But one night, I received a message that made my skin crawl. It was a long, detailed account of my day, what I wore, where I went, and even who I talked to. It was clear that he had been following me closely. I knew that I had to do something. I blocked him on all platforms, hoping that that would end it. A few days after blocking him, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Jonah, asking why I had blocked him and was insisting that we needed to talk. I just hung up immediately, but the calls kept coming, and I just chose to put my phone on silent and ignore it. That weekend, I went to stay with a friend, hoping that the companionship would help me regain some calm. It was a relief to be away from my usual surroundings and just to have someone to talk to and spend time with. But even there, the anxiety didn't fully leave me. I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see him lurking nearby. And thank God, nothing happened while I was there. When the weekend was done, I had to go home. Returning home was tough though. The moment that I unlocked my door and I stepped in, I got another call from an unknown number. I'm not dumb. I knew it was Jonah. I answered it, and before he could say anything, I blurted that if he ever bothers me or shows up in front of me ever again, that I will take this matter to the police. I think that got to him, because after that, he never bothered me again. I don't know what was up with him, if he was bothering me because he liked me, or was he just a clingy and obsessive friend? I don't know, and I don't think that I want to know. I'm just glad that I don't have to deal with him anymore. When I landed a job as a university professor, I was absolutely thrilled. It was my first real teaching position, and I was eager to inspire my students and just share my passion for the subject. I spent countless hours preparing lectures, trying to make them engaging and informative. I wanted to make a strong impression both on my students and my colleagues. The first semester was really challenging, but rewarding. However, once midterms came around, the results were a wake-up call for me. They weren't as good as I hoped, and I realized that I had much to learn. Despite my dedication, I was still trying to find my footing, trying to balance my teaching style with my students' needs. During this time, a senior professor caught wind of my struggles. She was well respected, known for her experience and influence within the university. But instead of offering guidance or support or help, well, she took it upon herself to mock my efforts publicly. Her words were so sharp and critical, and she didn't hesitate to share her opinions with other faculty members. It felt like she was trying to undermine my confidence and tarnish my reputation before I even got started. I was determined to confront the issue though. I decided to speak with her directly. I hoped that a respectful conversation might help clear the air. Maybe I've unknowingly done something to annoy her. And getting advice and tips from someone so senior from me would probably help me with my career. To my surprise, when I approached her, she seemed to back off a bit. She offered to give me constructive feedback, but said that she can only do it in her office. So, she invited me to go there to discuss things further. When I arrived at her office, a sense of unease suddenly settled over me. The room was orderly, filled with books and papers, but there was something in the air. I couldn't understand why I was feeling so uncomfortable. It could be because of the discussion that we were about to make about my performance. But something in my gut told me that it was something else, but I could not figure out what exactly. I stepped inside, and then she locked the door behind me, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. I was trying to remain calm and I took my seat, and I suddenly turned on my recorder. Which is not a really normal thing to do, but me, a true crime enthusiast, kinda learned some tricks and tips from the shows that I watched. Also, I was used to recording lectures for students that I did, so I could listen to it when I get home, just so I can hear and identify areas where I can improve on. Anyway, I did it in her office, and it felt like the right precaution given the circumstances. She began to talk about how she was done flirting with me, something that caught me completely off guard. From my perspective, there had been no flirting at all. As she spoke, it became clear that she saw things very differently. She accused me of playing hard to get, saying that she was interested in me in a way that made my skin crawl. This woman, who was old enough to be my mother, has been nothing but mean and rude to me, and it's crazy that she calls it flirting And me giving her basic human respect is considered as me flirting back? Her words were an absolute shock to me, and I told her that I wasn't interested. I was trying to keep my voice steady despite the panic rising inside me. And that's when she switched tactics. She was threatening to accuse me of sexual assault if I didn't comply with her wishes. She claimed that as a senior member of the board, her word would carry more weight than mine, and I know that that is exactly how things would play out. I was terrified, but I kept my composure, aware that our entire conversation was being recorded. I just told her that I needed time to think and I would reach out with my decision later. She seemed satisfied with that for the moment. She then unlocked the door and let me leave, though not without reminding me of the consequences of taking too long. And as soon as I left her office, I went straight to the dean. I replayed the whole recording for him. I was confident that it would resolve everything. Unfortunately, his reaction was not what I expected. He listened but didn't seem overly concerned. His response was lukewarm at best. It was clear that the institution's politics ran deeper than I had anticipated. I felt trapped and without options. I had a feeling that if I brought this up to the police, they would all flip this on me instead. So I just did what I could. I began searching for jobs elsewhere. I soon found an opening at a local high school. The job did pay less, but the environment seemed healthier. I needed to step away from that toxic situation at the university and that creepy woman. Leaving was bittersweet. I was so proud of myself getting into a university. I had entered the job full of hope and ambition, only to encounter unexpected challenges. But I am hopeful that this time, I won't encounter creepy co-teachers and horrible management again. And I hope that we never meet again. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.